Hello everyone, Stjepan here. I will cover the last two games from the Zadar Open in this video. And if you have seen the previous videos, then you know how the tournament went thus far. In the first 7 rounds I was at 4 out of 7, but still losing rating points, and yeah, it wasn't such a great tournament, but I've managed to come back sort of before round 8, and I lost 3 games and won 4, but all the games I had won were against lower rated opponents, so it wasn't such a great start or the middle of the tournament. Now in round 8 I faced an opponent rated about 170 points higher than I am, and I had enough time to prepare. I had won round 7, so I got paired up finally, and I had the white pieces once again, which was pretty lucky because I had the white pieces in round 7, and often in the Swiss system people will get the same color twice in a row, since the pairings can't be done properly. I mean, there is an odd number of players, so one player has to have the same color once again twice in a row. So I got white once again, and my opponent Romeo Soric, who is 2023, he plays several things with black against pawn to e4. He plays the Alekhine Defense, which he played in this game. He also plays the Pirc, d6. He sometimes plays the Scandinavian, so I had a few things to prepare. He also plays the caro-kann once in a while, so I mean, there were several options, but the Alekhine Defense seemed to be the most likely. And I prepared for that. And usually you can see one video of mine against Zdenko Bender on the channel. It was played in the Zagreb Championship, in which I employed the line with knight to f3, and which is an uncommon line, but I won the game with a bishop sacrifice. So in this game I didn't want to go for that line, because the problem in the Alekhine with knight to f3 is that black then gets to develop his bishop normally and pin my knight. And if my knight isn't on f3, if my knight is on e2, or if my knight stays on g1, then the black bishop from c8 doesn't really have a normal square to develop to, which is actually what ended up giving me an advantage in this game. So e4, my opponent played knight to f6, and they played the main line. E5, knight to d5. You can either play c4 or d4 here. I played c4 first, knight to b6, and now d4. Black's basically only move, the most commonly played move, is d6. I have to take. I don't want to allow black to take and exchange the queens, so e takes d6. Here he can either take with the e pawn or with the c pawn. Taking with the c pawn is slightly less common, but good nonetheless. I mean, black has a slight disadvantage in the opening. Of course, white has the center, but the Alekhine is very dangerous. He took with the e pawn, and now knight to c3, the most common move, bishop to e7, preparing to castle, and bishop to d3. Now bishop to d3 is, well, a move I have to play, because I don't want to play knight to f3, as I said. I don't want to go into those systems. I want to play knight to e2, and when my knight is on e2, so if my knight gets to e2 and he plays bishop to g4, then I can simply play f3 in many positions, so he isn't pinning my knight, and I'm not undefending my d4 pawn. And very often, if you can imagine the knight being on f3, bishop on g4, bishop to f6, putting pressure on d4, then my knight isn't really defending d4, so white could get in a lot of trouble that way. And as I said already, the main point of bishop to d3, knight to e2 is to deny his bishop of any good squares. Now, I mean, he can go to e6 or to d7, but that's not really that much. So he castled knight g to e2, and he played bishop to g4 immediately, which I just can't understand. Now, of course, I can play f3 here. I didn't really want to, because if I play f3, then he can play bishop to h4 check. I don't really want to play g3. I don't want to play knight to g3. So I decided not to play f3, because there's really no need. My d4 pawn isn't attacked yet. If he plays bishop to f6 next move, then I might play that, but I still have bishop to e3 defending the pawn anyway. So in case of knight c6 and bishop to f6, then I could consider the move f3, but for now there was no need. I played bishop to e3 defending my pawn, knight to c6, and I castled. Now if I play f3, he isn't able to play bishop to h4 check, because my king is castled. And here he surprised me He took a long time here. He took a long time before bishop to g4 as well, which I thought was a mistake. And here he took on e2, which I just don't see this move being good in any way. I just can't find the good side of this move. Of course, he's removing the defender of d4, but d4 is defended now. It's defended twice. I can take with the knight, with the queen, or with the bishop. I wanted to take with the bishop to open up my queen to d4, because in many Alekhine positions, black is going to play. Black is going to play d5, and then after I play c5, my d4 pawn is defended twice. And there are numerous ideas here. So I took with the bishop, and he played d5 immediately. And now I thought I must be better already. I haven't analyzed the game with an engine yet. I'm going to do that at the end of the video. I analyzed it for 5 or 6 hours myself, and I found one severe mistake which I made, which is actually a move I considered, but here in this position I just couldn't justify the move d5. Even though it's a common theme in the Alekhine and black is often going to play d5, in this position once the bishops got exchanged, it just doesn't make any sense. So of course if I take on d5, then black is equal. White has no advantage, so I have to play c5. And even though this is going to result in a backward pawn, his knight doesn't have any normal square to go to. I mean, he could go to d7, but that loses a pawn, so he can't really do that. Going to c8 is too passive, too horrible. If he goes to c8, then I can play bishop to f3 and round up this pawn easily. So his only move not to lose a pawn or the knight is knight to c4, and now I take. He takes, and now this is where I made, I think, the only severe mistake of the game. We're going to see with an engine. Of course, his c4 pawn is loose, and there isn't really a way to defend the pawn. And if I play queen to a4 here, it's not clear what he can do to defend the pawn. In fact, he can't really do anything. I mean, if he takes my pawn here, I thought I could play rook here and just win, because after bishop to f6 I can play, no, not here, because this is check. Wait. No, yeah, I can take here. I can take here now, and he's just losing a piece. So he can't take my pawn. So after queen to a4, I can just pick up c4, and that would be the safest way to pick up the pawn. However, after d takes c4, I thought I had a better idea. I thought I should play d5 first, forcing his knight to e5, and then play queen to a4, forcing the knight to e6 or somewhere later on. And I played that. So d5, knight to e5, defending the pawn, and now queen to a4. And the position I saw in my head was, well, I thought he couldn't defend the pawn anyway, and I was right. Perhaps the engine is going to find a way to defend, but I don't think there was one. Now the thing is that if he plays bishop to d3, threatening to take on b2, I always have the move queen to b4 after taking the pawn, and the knight is trapped, so the knight doesn't have any squares. So I thought this would be good for me as well. And to this he reacted with the move I looked at, but I didn't think it was good. He played b6. And now the idea of the move queen a4 was to force the knight from the defense of the pawn with bishop to d4. And now he has to play knight to d3. He doesn't have any other move. Otherwise he just loses a pawn, so knight to d3. And here, if I take on c4, as I said, he can't take here with the knight because queen to b4. However, if I take on c4 immediately, if I take on c4 immediately, he can then take the pawn here, and he has... he can't. Wait. What was I calculating? So after queen to c4... Yeah, I thought he would have some tricks. I'm not sure what, though. Perhaps knight to f4 would just be good, because now he's threatening to... No, he's not threatening anything. So this was okay as well. So perhaps I could have taken here immediately, but I saw a better variation, and I took on b6, because now he has to recapture. If he takes on b2 now, once again queen to b4 would force him to d3, and let's say, okay, let me show you that variation. So here, now he has the same problem once again, just this pawn isn't here. So he has to recapture. he has to recapture the pawn. If he takes on b2, I was also looking at these positions, but I'm not sure they're good. Here, he has to take here, and they take here. Yeah, I'm a piece up. This is good as well. So I don't even have to play queen to b4. I can just capture on c7. But anyway, he did what I thought he would do. He took with the a pawn, attacking my queen, and now after I take on c4, once again, knight to b2 doesn't work because queen to b4, and the knight has no squares. Luckily, my knight is defending a4, so now I'm just a pawn up. I mean, this doesn't work. So after a takes b6, queen takes c4, he didn't play that, of course. He played knight to c5, and now I'm a pawn up. I have a very strong pawn on d5. It's not really clear how he can attack that pawn because I already have two defenders. I can bring the third one in with rook to d1 at my leisure. So I decided just to develop my rook from f1, rook f to e1. He played bishop to d6, and now the point of rook to e1 was to deny him any activity for his bishop. I wanted to play bishop to e5 because my bishop is sort of in the way here. I don't have that many attacking chances with the bishop. I never want to take the knight, and I want to get rid of his bishop, which is defending these two pawns. And I figured that in the future, if the bishops got exchanged, I'm going to be able to put a lot of pressure on the pawns. So I played bishop to e5. And now, well, he can exchange activating my rook. He can play rook to e8. It doesn't really matter. He played rook to e8. I took the bishop. He took with the queen. And now I think I found a very good move. I mean, I was calculating that move well in advance. I saw that I would be able to play that if he goes, if he puts the knight on c5. So I played b4. And one thing I didn't mention, he was in time trouble. He was in time trouble around move 20 already. I mean, he wasted a lot of his time thinking about the moves, the last 10 moves. Of course, the position was hard to play, but he was losing the pawn anyway, so he shouldn't have wasted that much time. So in this position, he had about 7 or 8 minutes left, and he just blundered. Now, the fact is that my back rank is weak, so in some positions I could get checkmated, of course, and let's say he takes on a2, I take with the rook, that's checkmate, so I have to be careful. So he doesn't really have a good retreat square for the knight. I thought the best move would be knight to d7, after which I can go for the queen exchange or play knight to b5. I figured I would play knight to b5. I'm not sure though. But yeah, this is the move I was looking at, and I thought I could play knight to b5 and just win another pawn. I couldn't see what he can do about that. The second thing is that his queen doesn't really have any squares. The queen can either go to f6, g6, h6, or to f8. The queen is basically trapped, and it has to become inactive. And after the queen moves, I can take here, and he doesn't really have time for this because I can take here, and now just play the move d6 and just have a completely winning position. So I thought these moves don't work, but he played the worst move. He just blundered the piece. He played knight to a6. Now, of course, if I take on e8, I can take the knight, but he counted on one back rank trick, which doesn't work, so I took here. I played queen takes a6. He played queen to e5, threatening my knight, threatening checkmate, but unfortunately for him, queen to d3 covers both threats. This checkmate doesn't work because after takes, rook here, queen to f1, he is too much material down. So after queen to d3, he actually resigned. Completely justified resignation, of course, and I finally managed to win a game against a high-rated opponent, and now I had a plus score rating-wise, and I was happy coming into round 9, the last round, and I think it was a good game. Let's see with an engine whether I've made too many mistakes and whether queen to a4 should have been played sooner. The opening I know, and I've actually prepared a lot for the variation before the game. I just want to see how big of a mistake is bishop g4 and bishop takes e2. Knight g to e2, white has +1, but that's sort of normal in the Alekhine. This is still theory. Bishop to g4 +1.5. Yeah, it's a mistake. I mean, the move doesn't make any sense. The engine wants me to play h3. I didn't want to waste the tempo, so bishop to e3, still +1 point something. Knight to c6, castles, and yeah, this move is normal. This move is normal, but then I just let him take my bishop. You sort of pretend you don't need it. And then that's a normal plan for black if the bishop is still on c8, so then you can develop to f5 in many positions. But he took on e2, this is +2, yeah. Bishop takes e2, what was the best way to capture? Queen takes is best, but yeah, developing my queen. But still, I think bishop takes is okay. The difference is it almost doesn't exist. d5, yeah, which is a bad move here because of c5. Here, bishop takes, pawn takes. Queen to a4. Yeah, queen to a4 was best, so it was a big mistake. Let's see what the engine recommends. Queen to a4, bishop here, defending once again, knight here, can I just take? Yeah, and now well, these pawns are more mobile than normally, so I guess I just exchange everything. Yeah, so we are exchanging the b pawn for the d pawn. But still, I don't think d5 was a huge mistake. It's plus 0.5, so it was a big mistake. And I guess knight to e5 was a mistake. So yeah, it's not that bad actually. The engine wants me to play b3 here. Why not queen a4? Okay, let's see. Queen to a4. Black is better here with b6. How is black better? No, it's equal. Okay, b6. Bishop to d4. Knight to d3 is a mistake. After bishop to d4, bishop f6, takes here, queen takes here. I mean, I'm better, I'm still better. Perhaps it's much harder to push my pawn if I play that way, but still. I mean, after bishop to d4, he played knight to d3, and now d6 was the best move, but I played cb6, which is okay. I didn't see c5. What can I do after c5? This was a good move. I completely missed that. So I can gain a tempo on the rook. Okay. Rook here. But am I not losing b2 as well? Okay, takes, knight takes. Yeah, apparently this was good for him. Now the position is equal. But anyway, after queen takes c4, knight c5, and yeah, now white is just better. Bishop d6 here, takes. b4, yeah. So that was the round 8 game. I think I played a good game. d5 was a mistake apparently, but he didn't manage to punish that mistake. It wasn't a severe mistake anyway. So coming into round 9, I was happy that I finally had a plus score, and I've actually earned some rating points, and I was happy. So in round 9, I faced an opponent rated 2155, a much higher rated opponent than I am, and I prepared for e4, knight to f3, and d4, because he plays all three. He usually plays e4 though, so I prepared for the caro-kann more than for anything else. But I couldn't find any of his games against the caro-kann, so I had no idea what he plays. So when my opponents don't have any games in the caro-kann, I usually prepare for the exchange variation or for the panov, because those are the two most aggressive lines which higher-rated opponents should choose. So anyway, e4, c6, d4, d5, and ed5, cd5, and bishop to d3, he went for the exchange variation, which I was happy to see because I'm well prepared for that. I play a line which not too many people play. Most people are going to play knight to f6 and bishop somewhere pinning the knight, and e6, and have a symmetrical position and prepare to get crushed by white's queenside majority. But I played something different. Knight to c6, putting pressure on d4, c3, g6, knight f3, bishop to g7, and now that gives me an option, another option. It doesn't allow knight to e5 too early before I play knight to f6. So that's a subtle difference, but it could be very meaningful in some lines. Bishop to f4 here, knight to f6 now, castles, and knight b to d2. And I'm going to analyze the game with an engine afterwards, but I always want my opponents to play this move, because now I have a tricky move, knight to h5, which I've actually played in 2 games already, in 2 tournament games. And this is a pattern most players who play the exchange variation miss when you have a setup with g6, bishop g7, because it's now it's become very uncomfortable for white, and he basically has to retreat the bishop back to e3, and once the bishop is on e3, then the rook can't put enough pressure along the e file, and I can play e5 and continue my development. So I've actually already had people play bishop to g5 and bishop to g3. After bishop to g5, I just play h6, and if bishop h4, g5, and after the bishop gets to g3, I just take it. So he can either play bishop g3 immediately, or allow me to expand my pawn structure on the king side and play g3 then. So he played bishop to g3 here, and I took. And after he takes with the h-pawn, now I can play bishop to g4, developing my bishop to the most active square without him being able to play h3. So my bishop is here permanently, unless he wants to move his queen and then play knight to e5, which he actually played. He's a very strong player. So queen to b3, now 2 of my pawns are attacked, I have to defend. Rook to b8 would be too passive, and I want my rook to be on c8 anyway, so I decided to develop my queen. And now after I develop my queen, there are knight e5 ideas, of course, so I have to be prepared for that. So, queen to d7, knight to e5 doesn't work immediately, of course, but rook f to e1, and now that actually becomes a serious idea in the position, and rook f to e8, and this move, this exact position I've analyzed before, and I've analyzed the move bishop to b5, which seems very tricky. Now this is the most activity white can get in the position at the moment, and now of course he's threatening knight to e5, and my bishop on g4 is stupid, my knight is pinned, so after I take, I give up my dark squared bishop, which is defending everything here, and yeah, that would be just bad if he manages to get knight to e5 in. So what I prepared about half a year ago, actually, in this position was to play f6, bishop e6, bishop f7. And my idea is to get 2 bishops on these 2 squares, these 2 diagonals, and have a lot of pressure on his queen side, which seems solid but could become very loose. So that's exactly what I played. f6, preventing his knight from coming to e5, and I actually have enough time to play bishop e6, bishop f7, and that was the point of queen to d7 as well. I don't want to play rook to b6, because then it's much harder to play bishop to e6. I can't play bishop to e6. And here he surprised me. I think here he played the far too passive move. He should play rook to e2 and rook a to e1, just doubling up, putting a lot of pressure on my position, because now if he plays this here, here, he can actually take and have some pressure along the e file, and this position would be okay for him. However, here he played knight to h2, and I think he missed the plan of bishop e6, because now he's actually helping me get my bishop where I want it to be, and dislodging his knight, so now he's going to have to waste the tempo bringing his knight back into the game. I was very happy to see this, and only now he plays rook to e2 and I play bishop to f7. So now instead of having his knight on f3 and his rooks doubled, now we have the exact same position with his knight on h2, so now that doesn't make any sense. So I was very happy here. I knew I was a couple of tempi up. I knew that I was more than equal, and in fact I knew I had to be better. I just didn't know how much better. And I think here he saw that he is in a bit of trouble. Of course I'm going to play e5. There's no way to prevent e5, even if he plays f4, which would be far too loosening, because if he plays f4, e5, f4 takes e5, and f takes e5, d takes e5, now these 2 pawns are just weak, isolated, and alone, and they're going to drop. So I'm going to play e5, whatever he does. So he decided to play queen to a4, trading a couple of pieces, which I don't know if I agree with, because I can force a trade and even trade the queens and have a better pawn structure. So I played a6, forcing a trade, bishop takes c6, and here I thought for a long time this was my biggest thing of the opening and of the middle game. I didn't know whether I should exchange the queens or not. Now if I take with the b pawn, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure whether my queen was better than his queen, and when it comes to trading pieces, I always try to ask myself, whose piece is better, and it doesn't matter who is material up. If someone's piece is better, then I want to trade it off. Here I wasn't sure. I thought my queen wasn't doing that much, especially after the knight comes back into the game, and I could have some problems around this square if I played badly. And I wasn't sure what his queen will do, but I didn't like the idea of queen to b3 and perhaps even b4, rook to b1, and forcing the pawns along the b file, and his queen would be very helpful here. So after bishop c6, I took with the queen, basically forcing a trade. Now if my queen dislodges his from a4, then I'm happy to keep the queens on the board. So of course I took, and now I have a huge center. I'm going to play e5 and have 3 central pawns and a much better pawn structure, and I have the bishop pair, and his pawns on the queen side are loose. So here he played knight to f3, bringing his knight back, wasting another tempo, and e5. d5, f takes e5, knight to g5. And this was an okay move, I've calculated it, but I thought it would just help me bring my king back into the center, and my bishop wasn't that active anyway, behind my pawn chain. So I just played rook to e7, not to capture the knight back, but to double my rooks. He took, I took, rook a to e1, rook a to e8. And now this is late middle game, perhaps even endgame on move 24. And I'm not sure what the engine is going to say, but I think I was significantly better. One thing is certain, and I can create a passed pawn if I manage to get d5 in, d4 in, and I can have a passed pawn, because my rooks are sufficiently defended. If I play d4, c takes d4, e takes d4, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, king takes, I would just win the game because I have c5, and I would have a protected passed pawn, in fact 2 protected passed pawns. So here he played f3, and I thought about playing d4 here. The problem is that he can ignore that. And I never really want to take on c3, because then, let's say he plays something like this. Because now the position is just equal, and I've ruined my pawn structure. And I don't really want to play d3 either, because after rook here I lose my pawn. So the only option would be to play here, and the problem is that now he can play c4. And after he remaneuvers his knight to d3, then he's just better. He can even play knight here and just block my position and put pressure on c5. So I couldn't make d4 work. So in this position I found another plan of transferring my king to the most active square, to c5. So I played king to e6. f4 doesn't work, rook takes doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I have enough time to do that. Here he played rook to d1, which is a very tricky move, because now if I play king to d6, he has this check, which doesn't really achieve that much, but it can stop my plans, or this check. So I decided to put pressure on the b pawn to force his knight to move before my king is pinned. So now if I played rook to b8, rook 8 to b8. So now if he doesn't defend the pawn, he loses the pawn. If he defends the pawn with knight to b3, which he played, then I get to play king to d6 without these knight checks. So I was happy to do that. And now his knight can't get to c5, which is probably his only source of counterplay. And here he played knight to c1, which I couldn't decide whether it was a good move or not. And here is when I think I started to let my advantage slip, and I misplayed the position. Again, the engine is going to say what I did wrong, but in my analysis, my next move was a mistake in my mind, so I played rook b to e8, and I'm not sure that's necessary. Perhaps I should have just played a5, a4, preventing any further advances of the knight to b3. Now what's clear is that he is going to play knight to d3 and transfer the knight into the center. And I can't really see what to do. I can't play e5 because my pawn is pinned, so I would just lose. c5, I'm not sure. I really didn't want to get this position, and here I think white is fine. I ended up getting it anyway, but... So after knight to c1, I played rook b to e8. And I was struggling for a plan. I had enough time on the clock. I had about an hour left. I didn't use too much of my time. But I just couldn't see what to do. I wanted to play h6, g5 to prevent f4, but then I saw that I couldn't prevent f4 anyway, because if my pawn is on g5, he plays f4, I take. He's just going to undouble his g pawns and have the same threats. I wanted to prevent b4, so I wanted to play a5. So I still think a5 was the best move here. King to c5 I don't think works, because after knight to b3, king to c4, I don't really see what I do with my king on c4. So I played rook b to e8, which I don't like once again. And I saw this this idea, which he has knight to rook to e4, sorry, because my pawn is pinned. And yeah, I figured I should either play rook to b8, allowing his rook to a4, and let's say this happens, trading these pawns, and I think my rook on the 7th rank would be far too strong. Or what I played in the game, which I think is a mistake now, and after my analysis I just saw that what I did just killed my activity, and my passed pawn doesn't really mean much, my bishop doesn't mean much, and yeah, I played d4. Now this was definitely the most critical position in the middle game, and I should have spent more time here. Nevertheless, I thought for about 20 minutes, and I don't think d4 was a good move. But anyway, d4, he played c4, and now I had two plans. I either wanted to play king c5 or c5. Now after king c5, b3, I wanted to play king to b4 and put pressure on a2, but after, no, he can't play this here, but he can play knight d3 check here, and he can play here. And now my king is trapped, and I didn't really like this position because first of all, he has this threat as well of playing f4, because my rooks aren't defended if he puts his other rook to the e file. And I thought my king was just horrible here. Of course, I don't have any squares, so this was a bad plan. So after king to c5, b3, I can't really play king to b4, so I wanted to play a5. But now after knight here check, if I move my king back, then he still has this move, and after here, okay, I'm putting pressure on the c5 pawn, but I can never capture that pawn really, because he has enough defenders. And he can prepare a plan with a3 and here, and push through b4 and disrupt my queenside play and exchange my c6 pawn and have a passed pawn himself. So after c4, I decided to close the position down with c5, which was perhaps the wrong decision, perhaps a too safe decision, but of course I saw it allows knight to d3, and now I have no play, my position is dead. So I played a5, rook d to e1, and here he's threatening f4, and okay, so let's say I play nothing, f4, if I takes, knight takes here, and if I take here, he takes here. So I think white is much better here. Of course, the pawn situation is equal, but he has 3 connected passed pawns, and my pawn is actually easily stopped either by the knight or by the king. So after rook d to e1, I have to prevent the f4 threat. As I said, g4 doesn't work because he can just have the same threat once again. The only difference is that I've undoubled his pawns, so I have to defend my rook. So I played bishop to f6, and now in the same variation, if he plays this, takes, my bishop is defending, so now my pawn is defended, my king can stay here. But after bishop to f6, he didn't play f4 immediately. First he played king to f2, and now I played a4, getting another 10 point, king to f1, and I played bishop to g5, still defending my my rook and actually provoking the move f4, because I thought the endgame would be better for me. And if he doesn't play f4, I'm going to play bishop to e6 and have a monster bishop. His rook is almost trapped, and my position is better. So here he did play f4, and the exchange I already showed happened. Rook takes, bishop takes, gf4, and now king to e6. My bishop is perfectly placed here, and I thought I had some chances here. King e2, king f5, king to f3, h5, I have to stop, g4 of course, g3, bishop to d6, b3, takes, g5, and I have enough time to do this, f takes, king takes. He can never play king to e4 because then I just win. I think so, the engine is going to say, but I think that this doesn't work, because now after here I can play this, and he can never take here because I just win. So king to e4 doesn't work, and if he attacks here, I think I can even sacrifice my bishop here and just win this way. because his knight doesn't really have any squares. I mean, he can't approach the h1 square. So he basically can't play king to e4. He has to do something else. He has to remaneuver his knight, and now the position is a complete draw. If he tries this, I'm not sure this works. I was looking at these positions, but I think I can even just take here, but I wouldn't take here. I would retreat my bishop, and yeah, I mean, if he takes, then I take. If he pushes, then I can play here, and I'm winning. So he can't really do anything. So after king takes g5, he played knight to f2. I played king to f5. Knight to d3, king to g5, knight to f2, king to f5, knight to e4, trying another thing, but it doesn't really help because I can just defend with bishop to e7. He can't really do anything. The tricks with b4 don't work still, so he has to go back. There's really nothing much else he can try in this position. So he played knight to f2, bishop to d6, knight to d3, king to g5, and we agreed to a draw. And I think neither of us could have gotten anything from that position. So okay, let's go back, cover the game with an engine. This I know, the opening. Here after knight here, knight to h5. And of course after bishop to e3, the engine thinks white is slightly better, but from a human perspective it's not good to block the e-file, so yeah. And here, just black is better, because I get the bishop pair. Takes bishop to g4. I know this position, and I know how to play this position. Queen to b3, as I said, I know the move rook to b8. I don't want to play rook to b8, because I want to have ideas of f6, bishop e6, bishop f7, queen d7, rook f to e1, rook f to e8, bishop to b5, and f6. Now, after f6, yeah, he can play knight to e4, but that doesn't really do much. He can get his knight to c5, but I wasn't too worried about that. That's actually the only move I was looking at, and I was going to play b6, and he doesn't have anything. If he plays queen to a4, then rook to c8, and I'm fine. So after f6, knight to h2, a bad move. Bishop e6, rook to e2, bishop f7. I accomplished what I wanted, and I'm better. This is minus 0.7, minus 1, so yeah, black is significantly better. Queen a4. The engine wants me to play e5 immediately. I wanted to exchange. The advantage stays the same. Bishop c6. Yeah, queen c6. I still have an advantage. The engine prefers pawn takes, but nothing major. Knight h to f3, e5, d5, fe5, knight to g5. Minus 1.5. This is a winning advantage. Yeah. So rook to e7. Takes, rook here, rook to e8. I have a big advantage. f3, king e6, the best move. I'm happy to see that. King e6, rook to d1. I should have played king to d6, but I played rook to b8, which is fine. Knight b3, king d6. Yeah, minus 1, minus 1.5. Yeah, and what I thought was the mistake, rook b to e8, is actually one of the best moves, and my advantage stays the same. Rook to e4. So yeah, d4 must be the mistake here. The engine wants me to play king to c7, and now if rook here, I don't even defend my pawn, I just play here. Okay, takes. If he takes here, oh yeah, I'm winning, because if he retreats the rook, then I can play here, and I'm winning the knight. Yeah, this is what I missed. I can win the knight if he messes around with his rook too much. So yeah, king to c7 was a good move. d4, I guess, was horrible. Yeah, now the position is equal, or white is slightly better. Yeah, but yeah. c4. Let's see. King c5. King c5. What happens on b3? Okay, so king b4 shouldn't be played, but a5, knight check. King here. c4, this is the position I feared, and white is slightly better here. So not king to c5. But a5, knight to d3, a4, what if he plays c4 here? Oh yeah. Oh. Ah. Okay. I can't really go here because he can. Oh yeah. I can take here. Yeah. So I didn't like these positions. I wanted to close down the position with c5, which I guess is bad. So yeah, white has a slight edge after knight to d3. He's blocking down my position. a5, rook d1, bishop f6, king f2, a4, bishop g5. Black is better after f4, but I guess this is nothing major. King e6, king here, king here, king here. What was my mistake? Bishop d6, I played all the best moves. I mean, those are normal moves. But okay. b3, 8 takes b3, 8 takes b3, g5. The position is all zeros, so now the engine sees it as well. Yeah, I don't really have anything. It's just all zeros, it's a draw. So yeah, this is how the tournament ended. I wasn't really happy to draw this game, even though he was much higher than me, because had I won, I would have almost accomplished my goal of 25 rating points. I would have won about 23 rating points out of 25, which would be fine. With this draw, I was only 12 points in plus, so still okay. And to draw with the black pieces against an opponent who is 300 points higher rated is always a good thing. But I thought I had winning chances, so from the start of the game, I wanted to win, and I played for a win. I didn't play for a draw. And yeah, d4 was a bad move. Yeah, but I just couldn't find a better alternative during the game. I have to work on my closed positions, and actually I decided to implement a new training method, not before tournaments, but throughout the year. And I'm actually going to play out games which ended in a draw from some significant move, some significant position, and try to find a win for the side that was better at the moment. I think that will be a good training method, just thinking about the position and trying to improve on what the player who drew a better position played. I'm going to do that without the engine, of course, just try to figure out what to do in a position and try to get much faster in doing that, because in this game I didn't get into time trouble, but in the two games I played with black where I was much better, I actually managed to lose because of time trouble. So I have to get faster in finding winning plans. So I'm going to take random games, not super grandmaster games, but 2200-2300 games, which ended in a draw, put them on the board somewhere in the middle game and trying to find a win for a side that was better. Okay, thanks very much for watching. This concludes the Zadar Open tournament. I'm going to cover the games from the Zagreb Open next, which I played 2 weeks ago, and those are the games I owe, the 9 games from the Zagreb Open. And I'm most probably going to be playing a tournament from the 3rd of January, a 7-round tournament, also classical chess, and hope to get my rating up at that tournament. Yeah, let me know what you think about these two. I think these were my 2 best games from the tournament, and I finally managed to win against somebody higher rated and not lose against somebody higher rated. And yeah, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more chess, and see you later. Bye bye.